Welcome to DMV Spotlight on ESPN 630, the sports capital, where we shine a light on local stories from the District, Maryland, and Virginia to inform, enlighten, and inspire you. I'm Barbara Britt, and it's this time of year where we see people on the street. We've had a wonderful holiday. Our bellies are full. Our houses have too many gifts, and we're throwing things away. But there's people on the street, and we see them when we're going to work, when we're driving around. And to be quite honest, a lot of times we don't know what to do. And I just want to welcome my guest today. He's going to talk us through a lot of these issues. I'm speaking with Joseph Metamano. He's the president and chief executive officer of the Central Union Mission. Now, that's a faith-based organization right here in the district. It's been here for a long time, hasn't it, Joe?
135 years, the oldest social service agency in town.
That is amazing. And you really do help a great many people throughout the year in various ways.
Folks who are homeless, men, women, and children living below the poverty line, senior citizens, we try to serve everyone. That
is an awesome mission. And really, I mean, we could talk for a long time because you are really trying to tackle some of the most difficult and persistent problems that mankind has faced. Really, the heartbreak of society, the homelessness, mental illness, gang activity, drug addicts, homeless veterans, families, and, a lot of times the women on the street are invisible, but they're there. The children are there. It's overwhelming and it's heartbreaking. So help us break it down, I guess, even before we talk about the various programs that you offer, because we want to highlight those. But just as a person living in the district area in the DMV, how should we respond?
Well, there's a significant problem with homelessness and poverty, even in the District of Columbia, such a metropolitan city. The four wealthiest counties in the entire country are right here in the DMV. There's tremendous wealth, but there's also tremendous poverty. So today, for example, there's almost 7,000 people living on the streets in Washington, D.C., this small town that's only about 67 square miles. I think there's the latest indicators suggest that about 13% or more of the population lives below the poverty line. And there's lots of factors. I mean, poverty obviously drives a lot of that, but lack of affordable housing. Washington, D.C. is a white-collar town, so relatively few blue-collar jobs that pay a livable wage. All these things contribute to the problem. And I know many people want to try to help address that problem. Sometimes it's difficult, but the best way to do it is through helping agencies, whether it's Central Union Mission or somebody else who has the expertise that's addressing those issues head on.
And that's where we get into the programs, because you really do have Central Union Mission certainly provides meals, and I think that's what people are familiar with if they get the little flyers in the mail. But there's many more programs than that because it's a much bigger problem than that. So what are some of the other programs that you have as well?
Well, I think what we're most known by is our shelter on Massachusetts Avenue. This is a shelter for homeless men. Our standard bed load each night is between 170 to 200 beds, and we're a full-service facility, so we do what most folks expect a shelter to do, the beds, the meals, and the showers. But we actually have a very comprehensive service center. We have a full dental clinic, a full medical clinic, psychiatric services, legal aid, trying to put as many services under one roof as possible. But the thing that makes us different in that facility is the fact that we're not just trying to comfort homelessness, we're trying to solve it one man at a time. And that's through our restoration program. For people who really want to try to get off the street, we work with them to address all their issues. It may be addiction, so we're helping men to battle addictions. Job training, because they'll never get off the street unless they can get and hold down a job. Emotional or mental illness. There's a variety of things that we try to address there, but it's really aimed at getting people off the street permanently. But the other thing that we do that a lot of folks don't know is that we have a program called the Family Ministry Center on Bladensburg Road. This facility serves over 4,000 people every month. It's meeting their food needs, their clothing needs. It's really standing in the gap for families that are living on the poverty line, standing in the gap between staying in housing and being homeless. So we're meeting those needs head on. And while they're there getting food and clothing, we're also helping with parenting classes, legal aid. We're also scaling up to help with addictions through that facility. Last but not least, we have a transition home in Southeast. And we have a summer camp for kids in Brookville, Maryland. So inner city kids go out into our camp every year, spend a week there, and get to have a summer camp experience like no other.
You know, and those are amazing programs. And I want to just circle back to this family center that you have, because that really, it keeps people from being on the street. And so over the years, I know people have backed up the chain a little bit and said, okay, how do they get there in the first place? So when a family comes into that center, how does that work for them? Do they get referred, or do they just find you? How does it work?
Sometimes they just find us. There's referrals from other agencies. Folks that come there, we want to make sure that we're serving people who have legitimate need. So if somebody's going to register for that food and clothing program, we do check their finances just to make sure that they are authentically in need. But once they're in our program, they're able to come every 2 weeks to get groceries. We have a clothing shop. They don't pay a dime for any of these things. But then we have emergency referrals that come in as well. People who may be suffering a temporary shortage, we provide that. But also, you may remember last year when the government shutdown happened, there were some lower level paid employees of the federal government. We even opened up the program to them because they were experiencing hardship, and some came and actually got food and clothing from us.
Because they didn't get paid.
That's correct.
That's right. And that how many of us, if we went without a paycheck for just a month or maybe 2, we would be in a very similar scenario very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Talking about the main shelter that you have, and you talk about helping these men if they want to get well, and getting them off the street. When you're dealing with addiction, is there an additional challenge that's faced there, or what is it usually a whole tangle of challenges?
Yeah, there's usually multiple layers. People who come to our shelter are, I would say, amongst the most broken in society. They've been on the street for a while. They are alienated from their families. They're often suffering from health problems, physical health, mental health, emotional health, and addictions. The addictions is a huge stumbling block. And sometimes it's addictions that put a person on the street. But what I've seen oftentimes is people get addicted while they're on the street because they're trying to medicate that pain of being homeless. So when they come to us, that's usually one of the first things that we screen for. One of the first things that we try to address is getting the addictions under control, because we know that they will never advance through our program, let alone be successful in life, unless they get that under control. But along with that is the mental and emotional illness. Folks who are on the street for any length of time oftentimes are suffering from depression, from paranoia, and so we try to bring those issues under control as well.
And that, I mean, you just, from time to time, when I lie down at night in my nice warm house under my covers, and you adjust your heat to just the temperature that you like, and you have a full belly and all of those things, but you think about people, especially with the weather in our area, you're like, how are people even surviving when they have been outside in this winter weather that we have in D.C., where it's rainy one day and windy the next day and a little bit of snow, a little bit. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they survive. I know some do not.
That's true. And, the thing about homelessness is that I view it as a homegrown problem. Homelessness is very much a local problem, and it takes local solutions to address it, whether it's Central Union Mission or the local church, but also there's a place for every citizen, every neighbor living in the D.C. area, companies. It really does take a collective effort to try to address it. And honestly, it's one of the more humane things that a person can do, because being outside, especially during the holidays, is very difficult.
And so talk to us, Joe. If you work in the city, you walk by homeless people a lot, or panhandlers, or you're driving and you may want to help. And a lot of times people honestly don't know what to, or they see somebody, and I know in the district and other counties they have a hypothermia hotline, and know that, and I've even called it from time to time. But what is the best response in those situations for someone who lives and works in the DMV?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously you want to be careful in doing what you're doing, but I know folks have a compassionate heart in the district and want to do something to help. The question I get most often is, should I give money? And the answer is no. Folks should not give out money, because there are so many services in the city that folks who are homeless living in the district know where to get them. So the money may oftentimes be used for drugs and alcohol. So if somebody is feeling the need to hand something to somebody living in homelessness, hand them some food, hand them a McDonald's gift card. There's these new tokens called Breadcoin available in the city now as well. But also, folks who are living on the street feel so dehumanized that sometimes just making eye contact and saying hello can lift their spirits to give them enough hope to get through the day. But as far as material need, the best thing to do is to support the organizations that specialize in this, like Central Union Mission or other organizations, helping them with their financial needs, with their volunteer needs, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that the folks are typically coming to for assistance.
When these men and these families get into your various programs, are they there just for a night or do they stay for a season?
Depends on the individual. We have folks that may come for just a couple of nights, and then we have folks that come on and off for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. There are some folks who are just chronically homeless, and we do the best that we can to try to help them and get them off the street permanently, but everybody doesn't have the wherewithal to do that, unfortunately. Broken people oftentimes are not able to move beyond their brokenness. And what we try to do as a Christian organization is provide hope. So if you can give somebody just that glimmer of hope, it gives them just enough to step into one of our programs. We try to do that especially around the holidays, giving people the hope of Christ so that they can at least raise up a little bit to enter one of our programs to start working on their issues.
And do people, when they come into you, have you seen lives changed? Have you seen people transformed? Tell us those stories as well, because we like
Yes.
those stories too.
Yeah, and let me tell you, it is not a hopeless problem. I'm fortunate that my office is in our men's shelter, so every day I get to see how the guys are doing. So I see when folks come in for the first time, and I get to see the progress they've made 6 months to a year later. And there's so much transformation happening in this place. You know, folks who came in that were absolutely broken and had hit rock bottom, and now they've regained their self-esteem, their self-respect. They're getting job training. They're excited about their lives now, excited about the prospects for the future. And there's so many stories to tell of the men who have put in the work and have reaped the benefits of that work. And it's just exciting to be a part of that and see it. The same thing at the Family Ministry Center, providing that hope of just providing a bag of food transforms a person's life. So that's the way I like to view Central Union Mission, is that it's a place of transformation and hope.
That is so exciting. And for the kids who get to go to the summer camp, have you ever spoken to any of their families or to the children themselves or the folks who run the camp?
I have, and it's interesting because we have folks who will come by to volunteer at the shelter, and I hear these stories all the time. They'll say, 15 years ago, my kid went to your camp and completely changed his life, and now he's doing a successful business in Maryland somewhere. So to hear the difference that something like summer camp can make is really profound. Most of the kids that go to our summer camp, they've never been out of the city. It's their first time being away from home overnight. They go out for a week at a time. And the camp is very much what you would expect. It's out in the country. There's horses. There's a swimming pool. They sleep in log cabins. And it's really a wonderful experience. And they're being ministered to while they're there.
That is awesome. I'm speaking today with Joseph Metamano. He's the president and chief executive officer of Central Union Mission, a faith-based nonprofit and the oldest private social service agency in D.C., serving our homeless community and those who are at risk of being homeless. And so when we talk about all of these issues that are they seem entangled, and yet it sounds like you like to approach it one person at a time, because it's easy as somebody who's watching on the sidelines to say, well, it's just too big. I can't fix it. But you're telling me a different story.
That's what we're trying to do. Every person has a story. Every person has personal brokenness. So we try to treat people on an individual basis to help them where they are and what their needs are. The way I like to explain it is this. All of us, no matter what economic bracket that you're in, we all have brokenness inside of us. We all have our issues. For most of us, people like me and you, we get to work through our brokenness in the safety of a loving home. But for a lot of people who are living in broken homes or homes with generational violence, you're not given the space to work through your issues. And what often happens is when those issues raise up as a teenager and you start to act out, you get kicked to the curb. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of folks end up homeless, is that they have broken relationships with their families. And so when I look at these folks, they are really people just like me that just weren't blessed to be able to work through their issues in a loving home that was stable.
And I want to ask you, because this is that time of the year where people do focus on giving over the holiday time, and then we come to the new year, and it sort of goes out of people's minds. So how do you keep that? I'm sure there's fundraising efforts that you all have and various ways that people can contribute. So give us some of those ideas as well.
Well, you're right. You hit it right on the head. Homelessness and poverty are year-round problems, 24/7, 365. During the holidays, I know there's a more acute focus on that, which is great. But the needs of agencies like Central Union Mission and others are year-round. It's not inexpensive work to do, the work that we do. We're blessed by having donors that are individuals, corporations, foundations, and churches. One of the things that's a little bit different about us is that we are a Christian organization. And the other thing is that we are 100% privately funded. We receive no money from the District of Columbia or the federal government. And because of that, we very much rely on the generosity of individuals throughout the year, individuals, corporations, foundations, and churches. So whether it's during the holidays or outside of the holidays, our financial need is great. So we do need support of the community, but also folks can volunteer. We have about 7,000 volunteer opportunities a year within the mission. So whether that's serving food, helping to do housekeeping, but also professional types of professional level volunteering, coming in and helping a man with his understand finances, teaching basic English and math, job training. These kinds of things are great opportunities. And of course, there's gift in kind, donating things like toys at the around the holidays, used clothing. People donate vehicles that they don't want to, try to sell. So we're open to all forms of support throughout the year.
And let me ask you, because you do not take government or federal or local money from the government, do you have a working relationship within the government in the district that's amenable to working together, even though there's not a financial relationship?
Very much so. We are at the table with all the right government working groups to help shape policy, to help shape strategy. D.C. is a small town, and the organizations, there's an ecosystem within Washington, D.C., and the government very much is a big part of that. And so we try to work very closely with all of our peers, including the government of the District of Columbia.
And the other organizations as well, do you feel that you have a good working relationship with them?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where when I first took this role, that was one of the first things I did was reach out to all of my peers to establish a stronger partnership. And whether that means that we're resource sharing, for example, we get a lot of donated food and clothing. Sometimes we have more than we can distribute at any time. We share that with our partners. And the same thing exists with other organizations in town. They may have a lot of something that I need. So there's an organization in town called Bread for the City. They have a whole team of about 12 attorneys that help people with their legal needs, and they've offered us to send our folks over there as we need it. We do have legal aid in-house, but we have one person versus a bench of 12 people. So when the organizations are able to work together in partnership, we're all just more impactful and more efficient.
Have you seen more homeless people on the street over your time there? I mean, is it sort of a constant number? Do you ever feel like you're like, wow, we're really going to get a hold on this and fix it?
Well, every year there's something called a point-in-time study. Most major cities do this. One night of the year, they hire a team of folks or volunteers to go out and literally count people on the streets or in the shelters. The latest data indicates that the number of homeless families and females have declined. And that's largely attributable to the fact that that's where the government of the District of Columbia has put their focus. Their strategy has been very focused on reducing homelessness for women, children, and families. So
they just opened some centers, I think.
They did, yeah. So they're doing a good job in that regard. And those numbers have come down a little bit. But what the data also shows, and what I've seen, is the number of homeless men, single homeless men, has gone up in the district. And so that's what makes our shelter all the more important, because that's what our shelter focuses on. And so, there is a constant need, and it appears to be growing as far as the number of homeless men.
And you and I had talked before we came on the air that some of these, almost all these agencies are hurting a little bit financially because of some of the structure of the tax changes that came into play. So talk us through that and help us understand how that impacted Central Union Mission.
Correct. So most charities, and what most of the reliable sources are indicating, is that most charities experienced a decline in giving in 2018 and so far in 2019. There's probably lots of reasons why that happened, but I think what a lot of folks are focusing on was it's the change in the tax law disincentivized giving to an extent because of how you can itemize in your deductions and that kind of thing. Last year, we saw a dip in the stock market. This time last year, the government shutdown that happened here in the District of Columbia. So there's a number of factors, but the reality is that contributions have declined for Central Union Mission and others. Right now, we're looking at maybe we're 5% below budget, which is significant for us. We've even seen a decline in gift in kind. So the amount of food and clothing that is typically donated, that has gone down as well. But the need hasn't decreased. The need has actually gone up. So fewer resources, greater need, and we're a little out of balance there.
And what does that say about us as human beings, where we don't get anything back when we give? And that's really sort of the opposite of the nature of giving, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a great question, and I don't want to guilt anybody on that because I think there's just so many generous people out there. We're very thankful for our donors, but I think it's more of an education piece about the nature of giving and how the tax laws or these other factors really impact you versus how they impact the poor.
And I want to circle back because at your heart, you're also still a pastor.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That never goes away, even though you wear all these other hats as well. So I know you're still out on the street yourself.
That's right.
Sharing the message of hope.
Yep.
With whoever wants to listen. So tell us where you are and how people can come and hear you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm an ordained pastor through the Orchard Church in Dunloring, Virginia. And that sort of dovetails nicely with the fact that Central Union Mission also is a Christian organization. And everything that we do has that red thread of Christianity through it. I get that question a lot, though. Are people required to convert to the Christian faith in order to get services through the mission? And the answer is categorically no. We serve everybody regardless of their faith or any other condition. What we like to say is that we're compelled by our faith, but we don't compel that faith on others. My personal ministry through my church is we're out on the streets every Wednesday, both in Washington, D.C. and in Arlington, delivering food. And then we also do an outdoor church service to help give people hope that comes with the Christian faith. And that's been great to see that develop over the years. And there's a real need for it on the streets.
And on Wednesday nights, even in the cold, where are people going to find you most of the time?
Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. at St. John's Episcopal Church, right there by Lafayette Park, on the other side of the White House. We're in the courtyard out front. Anybody can come and check us out.
That is just amazing. And do you get a crowd even in the wintertime in Washington?
We do, year round. We really do. And it's interesting that a lot of folks come just for the food, but a lot of folks stay to hear the message. And that has increasingly been the case. So we have a core group of about 30 folks who come there reliably every Wednesday, get the food, stay for the message and fellowship and prayer. And it's been great to see that develop over the years.
That's amazing. What time does it all start?
We're typically congregating there around 7 p.m. on Wednesdays.
That is just incredible. So if you could just fix everything, how would that happen?
Well, it's really two-pronged. A big part of what the mission does is work to transform the lives, the hearts, the minds of the folks that we're serving. So homeless families, homeless men, senior citizens, but we also have a mission to help transform the hearts and minds of people who are not living in poverty and homelessness because, again, homegrown problem requires a homegrown solution. So we want to help folks who have means to understand the role that they play in lifting up their fellow human beings, their brothers and sisters on the street. So for me, the solution is not found necessarily in more social services, but really appealing to the compassionate hearts and minds of people who live in the district to be a part of the solution.
So when people want to, they're listening and they're saying, wow, I'd like to get more information, I'd like to find out if I could be one of the 7,000 volunteers, or maybe I do have a donation in kind, or just make it part of our family charitable giving or my personal charitable giving, what's the best website they can reach you?
We make it so easy. missiondc.org, so missiondc.org, and folks can sign up for volunteer opportunities right on the site. We have a whole volunteer calendar. They can make cash contributions. They can also get information on where to drop off material goods like clothing and so forth.
Do you have groups that come down faithfully and serve?
All the time. We have such a faithful volunteer base. We have folks who come in from accounting firms, law firms, churches, universities. We have individuals that come every week to help serve a meal. Very faithful folks. So there's lots of opportunities to engage. And the thing that I love about the volunteer program is that folks come not knowing what to expect, but they see real human faces. It puts skin on the problem, so to speak, and they realize that these folks that they're serving are real human beings. And it helps transform the hearts and minds of the donor, of the volunteers, so that then they go back and tell their groups about what's happening at the mission, and helps grow our opportunity to serve.
And how many times do people come in and think that they're going to be a blessing and they end up being blessed?
I think nearly 100% of the time that happens.
Do you have standard fundraisers that you do as Central Union Mission to keep these private funds coming in because you accept no government funding?
We're fundraising year-round. We do a couple of special events. We just concluded one called Show Some Love. It's an annual Christmas fundraiser that helps support general resources, but we also do a 3-day special event for the guys at the shelter to make sure that they are feeling loved and respected around Christmas time. So there's concerts, special meals, Christmas gifts, that kind of thing. This coming weekend, we're going to be serving the children of people living in poverty at our Family Ministry Center. It's called Operation Christmas Miracle. So we're going to be donating thousands of toys to individual families. We do an event typically in the spring or fall. It's called Heart and Soul. It's a foodie extravaganza that we just did in September of this year. That's a fundraising event. So there's things going on throughout the year where folks can give or engage with us.
That is awesome. And then you mentioned at the beginning, when people are walking by someone on the street, that sometimes just that eye contact, just that acknowledging that they're there. But again, reiterating that really the cash, even if they're waving a little cup in front of you, is not the best way to help.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can give them, what did you say the coins are?
They're called bread coin. I mean, I think the best way to help somebody is by supporting the organizations that are actually doing the work. So they can give to Central Union Mission, but if they feel like they want to hand something to that person, they can stop and buy a sandwich and hand it off, or they can give maybe a McDonald's gift card. But there's also bread coin. This is a new microcurrency here in Washington, D.C. They can go on the website called Breadcoin. I think it's breadcoin.org, or just Google Breadcoin. But they're tokens that they can buy and give to homeless folks, and these tokens are good for meals at various locations around the city. And that is a part of our big impact that we're trying to make. Each year, Central Union Mission provides over 60,000 bed nights of shelter. Over 60,000 bed nights of shelter. Over 3 million meals are distributed through Central Union Mission, thousands of counseling sessions. So we try to make the opportunity to engage and serve as diverse as possible.
That is amazing. And again, it's got to be both heartbreaking and encouraging at the same time almost every day.
It is. It's hard work, but I love to see the success stories.
That is fantastic. So I want to just thank my guest this morning. I've been speaking with Joseph Metamano. He is the president and Chief Executive Officer of Central Union Mission right here in D.C., the oldest private social service agency. And it is a faith-based organization. But as you said, even though you're compelled by your faith, you don't make others necessarily adhere to it. And then you can also find Joseph Metamano as a pastor, which he is, in his pastor's heart every Wednesday at St. John's Episcopal Church out on Wednesday nights at 7. That's right across from the White House, right here in D.C., with food distribution and a weekly outreach and prayer and fellowship. And that is just what an amazing mission that you have in life, and Central Union Mission is such the perfect outlet for that. So I hope people will find out more information at www.missiondc.org. And I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been speaking today with Joseph Metamano on DMV Spotlight on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Thank you so much, and you can find more at ESPN630dc.com. I'm Barbara Britt.